This episode of Geek Therapy Radio, I commiserate with USB Type-C or Thunderbolt 4 hub woes, and I go off on this tangent about which of my political friends, what group of political friends I'd rather party with. Let's do it. Welcome to Geek Therapy Radio. You've got your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. It always feels good to crack the mic and just talk with y'all. I didn't have anything really specific that I wanted to get to in this show, like any specific tech news. Maybe I'll get to something like that, maybe I won't. But I did want to at least start with something. So I have a longtime listener, friend of the show, Ed. He is a pilot. And every once in a while, and I'm sorry, Ed, for one, calling you out like this, but two, that I don't respond so quickly to the voice messages that you email me. And I'm using this as an example because I'm telling all of y'all listening, whether you're listening to this on the radio or whether you're listening to the podcast, a while back, and every once in a while I kind of remind on this, maybe once every couple years I've reminded this. If y'all want to send me audio recordings of yourself talking about a particular subject that you are interested in or a hobby that you are interested in, I would love to not only just hear that from y'all, but I would love if I could share some of that on the radio. It would be awesome. So if you're talking about video games or in Ed's case, aviation or whatever, even if it's just a question for me, hey, Johnny, what do you think about this or that? Send it my way. You know, it's really easy with a smartphone just to record your voice and share it in an email. I mean, it's super easy, whether it's Android or Apple or whatever you're using. It's really easy to do. But if you are so motivated to do that, I would love to have your audio clips and I would love to share it on the air and on the podcast. You could just send them to Johnny, JOHNNY, at geektherapyradio.com. That's just the easiest way to do it, is to email me. You can find the email on the website, geektherapyradio.com. You can send them to me on any social media. Share it with me on Twitter. You know, hit my DMs. So Geek Therapy Radio on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm technically on TikTok. Just however you want to send me audio clips, that'd be great. And if it's audio clips in the form of video clips, that's fine too. I'll pull the audio from it. But yeah, easiest way to get me some audio if you're so inclined with questions or comments or just talking about what you're into. And it's something that I can even share on the radio. That'd be great. Johnny, JOHNNY, at geektherapyradio.com. So that's how I wanted to start. Like I said, I have nothing specific, but I did want to start with a message that Ed had sent to me. I'm not going to play the audio from it because I did not ask for his permission beforehand. Just kind of off the cuff, which was great. But he was mentioning he has this USB Type-C, I believe, and forgive me if I'm wrong, a hub, a Type-C hub that he's trying to use with his MacBook, and it doesn't matter the specifics of the hub or the specifics of the MacBook or the iMac or whatever device it is. What I wanted to touch on, it was basically a cautionary tale. It's a frustration that as I'm recording right now on my 16-inch M1 Pro MacBook Pro, I'm looking at a few different USB hubs, USB Type-C hubs, Thunderbolt hubs. I've got 2 or 3, and hubs are kind of they can be the bane of your existence. So when Ed was telling me about his hub woes, about display outputs, and maybe he needs to format the hard drive that's built into the hub and all sorts of just hub problems, hub gripes. And I was like, that's so true. And that's the cautionary tale, is that you buy a hub. Let's say you get a hub off of Amazon, has tons of good reviews, blah, blah, blah. You've read reviews on it, and people say, yeah, it works great with my 13-inch MacBook Pro, and da-da-da, yeah, I use display out. I use it for an extra display output, and blah, blah, blah. It's really hard to know beforehand that whatever hub you buy, the Type-C hub or whatever, Thunderbolt hub, is going to be completely compatible with your Mac. With your Mac or with any device, Windows device, anything, with your Android, with your iPhone. It's hard to tell, like, where's the hidden fault in it that doesn't work with my setup. So let's say you type in your USB Type-C hub and your USB ports are working, but you can't get like 4K out of your HDMI output of the hub, or you can't get 4K, but the 4K is locked at 30 frames per second or less. Like, maybe that's the kind of Achilles heel of it. Sometimes you hook it up and then some ports, they don't work. Sometimes you hook it up and your computer just doesn't. For instance, oh gosh, which was it? I think that one of my hubs that I have, you plug in the Type-C into the Type-C of the computer, and then you plug the power delivery from the Type-C power brick into the hub, so it kind of does this pass-through power. It doesn't see it. Oh, I remember what it was. My newest Windows laptop, that 17.3-inch, oh gosh, what was it? I haven't used it in a while. The Zephyrus? No, I'm sorry, just brain fart. Gigabyte Aorus 17H. Awesome laptop. I haven't used it in a little while because it still needs some, and granted, I haven't tested it like in a month or two. Maybe the updates are already there. But it's been put away for a while because I've been having audio issues with it. It's not playing nice. At least Reaper on the Aorus 17H is not playing nice with my Tascam audio interface and blah, blah, blah. I get lots of pops and clicks just with Reaper on the Aorus 17H. So it's either an update issue on Reaper side or an update issue on Aorus 17H's chipset side, which I kind of lean more heavily towards because Reaper works on everything. But I haven't been using it, and my Type-C hub, when you plug it into the Thunderbolt 4 port of the Aorus 17H, it doesn't receive power delivery. Like, you can't do pass-through power delivery. So I have this 100-watt brick, and I want to plug my Type-C hub into it, and then I want to use the remaining 80 or so something watts available to charge the battery and just run the system, in kind of a silent, lower performance mode. But the Aorus 17H does not recognize power delivery coming through any USB Type-C dock that I've tried yet. So when you buy a Type-C dock or a Thunderbolt dock or a hub, who knows what issues you're going to run into? And Ed running into issues with his docks and his iMacs and everything, it hits very close to home. More Geek Therapy Radio coming up. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. You've got your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. Go to geektherapyradio.com to contact me directly, or for any other information about the show, where to find the podcast, which, it's 2023. You can find the podcast, of course, on the iHeartRadio app, but also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. It's everywhere. Just type in Geek Therapy Radio Podcast. Make sure it's the red, white, and black color scheme, and that's how you got me. Although, really, and this is not a humble brag, I would wager that at this point, so deep into the game here, that if you just start typing in Geek Therapy it'll show up. You'll see me first in Spotify or iTunes or whatever. I checked my rank, I think on Apple, on iTunes, I think like that. And I don't know how reputable the website was. I think it was Chartables or whatever. And I was like, I'm just curious about where my podcast ranks on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. And it was like number 242. And I was like, that's about, okay, that's not a... I know that there's no way I'm top 10. I was like, so what genres? What genre? I'm number 242. What is it saying for like the genre? It was like science, Indonesia, hobbies. I'm like, what is happening? I did not put Indonesia as one of my genres. Like, okay, so I'm ranked number 242 under the genres of the combined genres, I guess, of science, Indonesia, and hobbies. However that works, I don't know. All I'm saying, whatever the case is, when you type in Geek Therapy Radio podcast into your favorite podcast player, my humble brag is that odds are it's going to be the first one you see. There's another kind of like Geek Therapy network that I have no affiliation with, who I wish all the respect in the world and have nothing but love for, called like Geek Therapy Radio Network, something like that. But I think I have I come up first in the searches, which is good. That's not a brag. They probably have more episodes. They probably have more listeners. They probably have like whatever. I don't know. But I guess in the search engine optimization, Geek Therapy Radio, especially if you type in Geek Therapy Radio podcast, that's how you're gonna see me in your Spotify's and your Apple Podcasts and your Google Podcasts and of course the iHeartRadio app, all that good stuff. So anyways, that's how you get in touch with me. Back in the last segment, I'll just finish up this thought. USB Type-C hubs and Thunderbolt hubs, Thunderbolt 3 hubs, Thunderbolt 4 hubs, it doesn't really matter. When you go out from the Type-C port of your computer or your laptop or your phone or your tablet, and then you have access to extra USB drives, extra display outputs, either display output or HDMI or multiple HDMI outputs, headphone jack, microphone combo jack, Ethernet port, whatever, a normal Type-C hub, that it's kind of a mixed bag as far as typing any random USB Type-C hub into any random device. Like I mentioned in the previous segment, I won't go much further on this, but that I have 3 or 4 Type-C hubs and Thunderbolt hubs, and they all work differently with different computers. I don't have just one hub that works perfectly across all devices. And that was an issue that my that listener and friend of the show, Ed, was having, that he left a voicemail for me about, was, hey, I've got this hub or this adapter Type-C, it's not quite working right with the things that I'm using. But that's just kind of par for the course with Type-C hubs and adapters. It's kind of frustrating. One of the other frustrating things, and something that I would look out for when getting a Type-C hub, is maybe just because I do a lot of videography and video editing and editing in general, where I need to dump a lot of files, big files, off of SD cards into the computer. Make sure that the SD/micro SD card reader, that any sort of card reader built into your USB Type-C hub is running at USB 3.0 speeds. Like, verify that it's either running at 5 gigabits or 10 gigabits or whatever. Make sure it's not just running at USB 2.0 speeds. That's just me personally. If you buy a random USB Type-C hub, odds are, unless you look carefully, is that the card reader inside of it is going to be operating at USB 2.0, which sucks. It's so slow depending on what kind of files are offloading. For instance, I may be offloading a 10 gigabyte 4K video clip off of my Lumix S5, SD card, like big giant video files, multiple gigs, multiple tens of gigs, which takes forever at USB 2.0 speeds, if that's what the card reader is limited to in your USB Type-C hub. So that's a little tip. Like, at least when you're looking for a Type-C hub and you move giant files around or do giant file dumps off of SD cards that can go over 100 megabytes per second, that even faster than that, you can, USB, there's all sorts of different protocols, like UHS-1, I think UHS-2 is out now. Make sure that the memory card interface of the hub is running faster than USB 2.0. Make sure it's at least on the USB 3.0 protocol, if not 3.1, if not 3.2. Get all the speed. Don't buy. If it's a difference between $5 between a hub you're looking at that has the card reader at USB 2.0 speed, or $5 more for the USB Type-C hub that has the card reader at USB 3.0 or 3.1 or 3.2 speed, go for the faster one. Thank me later. It's so infuriating to buy this fancy hub. And hubs aren't particularly cheap. I mean, the hub that works best for me across the most devices, I'm looking at it right now. It's attached to my MacBook, and I don't want to jostle it too much because I don't want to jinx anything or or make it not work. But it has maybe if I can find it, I'll put it in the podcast description. So if you want a hub that I semi swear by, that works for me, I'll include it in the podcast description. I think it was around $40 or $50. It works out really well. My only complaint about it is that it gets really hot. It gets like really hot to the touch. Like sometimes you can smell it, which USB Type-C hubs getting hot is not uncommon. That's kind of par for the course, especially if you're using the kind of power delivery throughput function of it. Like you're pumping 100 watts through a USB Type-C hub, it can get hot. But the hub that is kind of my go-to workhorse that I throw in my backpack, that I take traveling with me, that I'm using right now as we speak, the audio interface is running through it right now into my MacBook Pro 16-inch. It has 3 USB Type 3 ports, 1 HDMI output, that's 4K up to 60 hertz. It's got the Ethernet jack, RJ45, of course. It has the Type-C power delivery throughput. And on the other side, it has a full-size SD card slot and a micro SD card slot running at full USB 3.0 speed. That's a good amount of ports for something that's really kind of compact. It's really no bigger than a mouse or a small battery bank or a small external solid-state drive. That's been my go-to. I have another one. Well, I'm looking behind the mic here in my little everything catch-all drawer, and I have got several Type-C hubs in there. One of them is really good. It's like a 13-in-1 hub. It has multiple. It has like 3 or 4 USB 3.0 ports, 1 USB 2.0 port, which is like for your wireless mouse and keyboard and kind of things like that. Like 2 HDMI outputs, headphone, microphone combo jack. Like it's got everything. And if it's on your desk, it serves as a wireless charging pad for your phone or whatever. It's really cool. The Achilles heel of it, though, it has the power delivery throughput, of course. The pass-through. The Achilles heel of it is that the SD and micro SD card reader on there are only at USB 2.0 speeds. I was like, that sucks. It's such an awesome... And it has the VGA output also that I can run into my CRT behind me here. But it's got USB 2.0 out for the SD card reader, and it's... Some devices I plug into it can use all the ports, some don't. Some, like, it just... It's so varied, and it's frustrating because you just want to buy the one USB Type-C hub or Thunderbolt 4 hub that's just going to work across everything. And that's almost impossible to find. Maybe you know where it is. And if you do, you can let me know on any of my social medias. Just type in Geek Therapy Radio Podcast or email me directly, Johnny at geektherapyradio.com, JOHNNY at geektherapyradio.com. If you have the perfect Type-C hub or Thunderbolt 4 hub that works awesome with your Mac and awesome with your PC and whatever else, let me know. More Geek Therapy Radio. Don't go anywhere. I should just rename Geek Therapy Radio, which you're listening to it right now. I'm Johnny Hemberg, your mental curator. You're listening to Geek Therapy Radio. I should name this episode like the Type-C Thunderbolt 4 hub wine cast, bellyache cast, because it's so hard to find a Type-C or Thunderbolt hub that just works perfectly across all of your devices. I have not found such a Type-C hub yet. I've found great Type-C hubs that work the best, mostly across a bunch of different devices that suck the least, I guess you could say, between multiple devices. But I've not found the one that's just like, this just works with everything, the protocol, everything, it communicates great with Mac, communicates great with PC, vice versa. Just unplug it here, plug it in there, everything works fine. I've not found that hub yet. There's always something, no matter what hub I use and no matter what device I'm plugging it into, there's some sort of Achilles heel, and it just kind of sucks. And I'm just commiserating with you, the listener, and Ed, who sent me this voicemail in my email, which is Johnny, JOHNNY at geektherapyradio.com, by the way. Sorry for repeating that so much, but when you're listening on the radio and there's 4 or 5 minutes of commercials saying God knows what in between the segments of my show, then you have to repeat it once in a while. That's the radio broadcaster in me, that you have to kind of do these little calls to action kind of repeatedly, because the radio listener, you don't know where you're catching them. You don't know when they're tuning into the show. They probably haven't been listening to the whole show. They're only tuning in for 10 minutes at a time. That's kind of like the rule of thumb with radio. And you'll notice when you listen to like a lot of talk shows, like if you're listening to Michael Berry or Kenny Webster or anybody else on the sister station or on KPRC, whatever, like they'll repeat things. You'll notice every 10 minutes or so, they may touch on a thing that they've already touched on. That's kind of rule of thumb. And it's not perfect. Every radio host isn't perfect about doing it. It's just kind of something to keep in mind, that if there's some information that you really need the audience to know, you need to repeat that information. I think it's really like you need to repeat it every 2 or 3 minutes, but at most every 10 minutes, because you don't know when someone's tuning in. You don't know how long they're listening. So you just get the important information out every few minutes or so. And that's what I'm doing with my email address, johnny@geektherapyradio.com, is you just repeat it for the radio listener. For the podcast listener, it's a little annoying. Other than if you're just listening to the podcast, it might be fun for some of you just to kind of know the inner workings of how the broadcast side of things work. Famous last words. I do not want to get very sidetracked with this, and I promise I won't. I just want to say, in the vein of if you think listening to kind of behind the scenes of radio broadcasting or even TV broadcasting, how it works, when I kind of let you behind the curtain here a little bit and tell you the little tricks of the trade and whatnot, I have this recurring thought, and this is all I'm going to say about this, is I have this recurring thought that if I wanted to have little red laser dots on my forehead from snipers of giant media conglomerates, I could write a book about what actually happens behind the scenes of radio shows, especially on, certain all radio is biased. I mean, no matter what you're listening to, whatever source, and I promise I'm not going to harp on this too much, but if you're watching CNN or MSNBC or Fox or whatever, like they're all biased in their own kind of different ways. And if I wrote a book kind of the behind the scenes of that bias and how it works, then I would be, not only would I lose this show, then I would probably lose my life, because somebody would come after me if I pulled the curtain back and just revealed how taken advantage of the audience is. Then, like, that's the real nitty gritty stuff that would belong in a book that should be kind of ghost written, that maybe I don't put my name on. It's kind of that kind of seedy stuff. But then again, and I'll end this with this, because I don't want to go down this path too much. I've been warned by my bosses, whenever I go off on these tangents sometimes, is just be careful. All I will say is, it's not entirely, let's say, corporate radio's fault or corporate television, cable television's fault that the audience gets kind of sold, in incorrect things as gospel truth. I'll just say it like that, because here's the other thing. Here's something that I realized a year or so ago when I was getting all hot and bothered about the subject of just the way TV and media manipulate, and the idea that this crazy, dividing line between mainstream media and, let's just be specific, like conservative talk radio versus mainstream media, there's no such thing as that. It's all mainstream. If you're Sean Hannity and you have 20 million listeners each day, that's mainstream. Hundreds of millions of people, over 100 million people listening to conservative talk radio every single day. That's mainstream. Anyways, without getting too fired up about that, here's what I realized a couple years ago. People outside, people like to hurl names at each other, say, oh, they're lemmings and fish in a barrel, and it's so easy to manipulate this audience, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, that's one thing. I mean, the thing is, the realization that I had a couple years ago, someone mentioned this to me, is there's a huge part of the audience that wants to be lied to. Like, even if I were to write a book and say, here's all the truths, here's all the ways you have been spiritually and politically and emotionally hijacked day in, day out to sell you stuff, here's how it all works. If you knew the truth, you'd insurrect Fox News and not Washington, D.C. If you actually knew what was going on behind the scenes at somewhere like Fox News, you turn your pitchforks towards whoever's making those broadcasts. But the thing is, that also probably won't happen, because the realization I made is people want to be lied to. Not all people, of course. Not all people want to be lied to, but a huge part of the audience just wants to be, the lie they believe is like a safety blanket. They know that what they're being fed and what they're feeding and what they re-spout to whoever will listen, they know that it's nonsense. They know that there's obvious blind spots they're purposefully not checking. They understand all of that. They understand the flaws with their political party. They understand the flaws with the other political party. They know that their belief system is imperfect. They know it for a fact that what they believe is wrong in many ways. But it's still comfortable to hold that belief. They don't want their minds changed. And even if you did change their mind, they don't care. They would want to continue to the warmth of the lie. So even if I'm just saying me as an example, like if I quote unquote expose the truth of what happens behind the scenes in corporate radio or corporate television, you'd run the pitchforks towards the radio stations and not towards Washington, D.C. Even if I made that book, like even if I put all that truth out there, people want to stay comfortable in their lie. They don't want the truth, and even knowing the truth, they wouldn't go towards the truth or believe the truth. Or maybe they would believe the truth, but their lie is more comforting. The lie is it's the security blanket. So that's why I don't get all kind of hopped up on it anymore, even though the last 3 or 4 minutes is obviously evidence to the otherwise. Is that even if I was to use this platform to speak truth, people, they don't want to hear the truth. It's just people don't want to hear the truth. They want to believe what they believe. It's hard to check your blind spots, and that's kind of a saying that comes up a lot in my own mind. Here's the geek therapy part of all this: is I try to be conscious, and I'm not perfect. Try to be conscious of like my own blind spots. And I don't mean just like. I try not to be that kind of person that says, hey, I don't see color, I don't see race, we're all one. Like, no, I'm not like that. I'm not that obtuse or oblivious. But just, there's things about other cultures, even if it's, I apply the same consciousness to like a diehard, let's say Trump supporter as I would a diehard liberal. Like, it doesn't matter. I try to be in these situations where I'm being sensitive and understanding my blind spots before prejudging somebody or prejudging an entire group. Just be sensitive to the blind spot that these are individuals. These are individual people. And a matter of fact, it goes along with the whole scope and mission statement of Geek Therapy Radio, that no matter what side of the aisle you're on politically, whatever you believe, we are all geeks about something. We have that in common. We have our hobbies, our hopes and dreams, and they overlap greatly. No matter what walk of life you're from, we're all geeks about something. We all have our passions. We all have our hobbies. Liberals love the Astros. Conservatives love the Astros. Like, that's the thing. Maybe not this season because people forget about the All-Star break and they see how the Astros are doing right now as I'm recording before the All-Star break and saying, oh, I don't have high hopes of the Astros. Nothing matters until after the All-Star break. And that's something that a liberal and a conservative can both discuss over a beer, is whether or not the Astros suck this year or they have a chance, or we'll see what happens after the All-Star break. That's my whole thing. We're all geeks about something. No matter where we are on the spectrum, we're all geeks about something. More Geek Therapy Radio. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. You've got your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. And I'm going to say this for my radio audience more than I will say it for my podcast audience, because it's differing demographics. I've been in this radio business since 2009. I ran KTRH. I did full-time overnights, so Coast to Coast AM. I had George Norrie on Geek Therapy Radio. That was a perk of working in the industry, is George Norrie was one of my heroes, and I emailed him and say, hey, do you have a few minutes? Can you come on my little rinky-dink show? He's like, sure. So I had George Norrie on a while back, but I ran KTRH. I was the board op for KTRH. I was not program director or anything like that, but I worked at KTRH for a very long time, and I was co-producer for a long time on the Michael Berry Show. I provided a lot of voiceover content for little comedy skits on Kenny Webster and Pursuit of Happiness. I've been on Jesse Kelly Show a number of times. So I've been in this industry. I have ran those shows. I have call screened those shows. I have helped with content and pre-show meetings with those shows. Like I've been in here for a long time. I know how this works, specifically how conservative talk radio works. I don't agree with everything that I have worked on, or like I don't agree with hosts 100% of the time. Obviously, I don't agree with Kenny 100% of the time. I don't agree with Michael Berry 100% of the time. I don't agree with Jesse Kelly 100% of the time. Obviously, but I know I've been in here long enough to see like what's really going on and how things kind of operate, and I feel like it's confession time for me. I feel like there may be a vibe that I kind of pick on conservatives or conservative talk radio more than tenets of liberalism, which I always say, like, my scapegoat for my biggest gripe against liberalism is if it ever like came after the DeLorean. Like if for some reason liberals passed this law that you can't drive a V8 gas burning classic car anymore. Like if they came after the DeLorean, which is a V6 but burns gas and everything, if they came after the DeLorean, I would have a beef with that. Like that's a kind of a slope of the quote unquote Green New Deal that I'm weary of, is like, don't take away our classic cars. Come on. That would be a problem if you start coming for our V8s and our manual transmissions, and like you're worried about an old 1967 Mustang is not as fuel efficient or whatever as an EV, whatever. Like that's a problem, and that's a beef that I take all day long with some of liberalism is this attack, quote unquote. If Fox News was writing the headline, "Liberals attacks on classic cars." They want to take away your classic car. They want to take away your Corvette. The war on classic cars. That's how Fox would label that segment. It's utter nonsense. But I want to say, because maybe it feels like I pick on conservatives most, it's just because that's my people. That's where I live. Those are my people. Most of my friends are conservative, and I've got a lot of liberal friends too. It doesn't matter. But I'm kind of like, that's the business I've known for a long time. That's the business I've been steeped in for a long time. And this radio business is conservative radio business. So yeah, there's things that I see from the inside that I poke at and take issues with sometimes. I have a feeling that if I worked for NPR, I'd do the same thing about blind spots of NPR. Doesn't matter, whatever. But I do want to say this. I want to clear the air a little bit. This might be kind of controversial, but at the same time, I bet you got a lot of liberal friends and a lot of self-identifying liberal listeners that would probably agree with this. Come on, let's be honest here. Let's just be real honest. Heart of the matter time. This is my truth that I want to speak. I'm gonna get real close to the mic. Conservatives are way more fun to party with and throw way better parties. There, I said it. If I had a choice, if I had two party invitations from like one group of friends who it was that are self-identifying as liberal, and I got the same for the same night, same date for my conservative friends, like, hey, we're going out to a field, we are drinking, we're going to be shooting 22s at beer cans, we're going to have a bonfire, we're going to have the boombox going, like, We're going to be going mudding. We're going to be doing all that. Let's go to the beach. Let's pop a tent. Let's pop a cooler. Let's get rowdy with it. That's the party I'm choosing. Versus a liberal party where I'm just being funny here. This is called satire, where they might want to use paper straws to drink organic, naturally produced Mai Tais with bunny safe sweeteners, and I don't know. That's just satire. I'm just being a joke, but I'm just saying on average, like given the average, if I had a party invite from a group of friends I knew that were way conservative and we're just going to be listening to country music and we're going to be drinking, don't drink Bud Light now, but drinking whatever they're going to drink now, Modelo, fine, or a group of from a liberal friends that have a party going on at the same time. I'm just saying, two parties happening at one time, liberal group of friends, conservative group of friends. I'm going to choose the conservative party every single time, unless like I'm obligated to go to my liberal friends party. Now, if they're on two separate nights, sure, I will go to both parties and I will have a good time at both. Just going to have a better time at the conservative party. That's just the truth. That's the olive branch I offer out to my conservative listeners who may think that I might go after conservatism like unbalancedly on this show, kind of against the grain of the whole ethos of the radio station I'm on. I'm really in the middle. Like if you were, politically speaking, I feel like I'm just really in the middle. Like I said, I just know the conservative media game works because I've been doing it since 2009. I've been in the belly of the beast, so to speak, since 2009. It's what I know, so I can pick on what I know. But if you feel that I go against conservatism sometimes, or at least the political ideology of it, y'all are who I'm going to party with. Like that's liberal party or conservative party. I'm going to hang out with the conservatives and have a good time because it's going to be a better time. It's going to be a better party than the liberal party is going to be. And by party, I don't mean political system or Democrats, Republicans. I mean like you're going to party down. It's Friday night. We're having a party. Liberal group of friends have their party planned. Conservative group of friends have their party planned. I'm going to the conservative party. Those are my people, those who I know. Even if I disagree with a lot of what they believe, I'm still partying with them because they will party better and it will be more funner. We'll be doing donuts. We'll be doing donuts in the middle of a field in a Ford Mustang at the conservative party. That's going to be how that party goes down. We're going to pull up to Whole Foods in a Prius with the liberal party. Go look for the organic chips and all sorts of bull crap. I'm partying with the conservatives. I'll hang with the liberals, and I'll go to their party if it's on a separate night. Just conservatives throw the better party. Come at me. That's just the way it is. And I hope you're taking all this in tongue-in-cheek. Don't cancel me, bro. I'm just talking. It's freaking satire. I know liberals can throw fun parties. Sure. I'm just saying. Well, I've said what I'm going to say. Ed, you asked how my pilot training's going. I haven't even started. I'm kind of, the cost of it all scares me. Not necessarily the cost of getting lessons, but like then the cost of airplanes and things like that. It's like, geez, $20,000 engine overhauls and such for a Cessna 150. It's scary. You are worthy of love. You're worthy of giving love, receiving love, and you're worthy of your own self-respect. Thank you so much for listening to Geek Therapy Radio this week. Please support your local businesses, your local hobby shops, things like electronics parts outlet, an atomic hobby shop here in Houston, any sort of retro video game hobby shop that isn't GameStop, obviously. Support your local businesses. They're not even sponsoring me. I'm not even being paid to say this. Support your local businesses. Thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to y'all later. Peace out.